Welcome. Get in on the conversation with me. I'm Christy Barnes, your host for this five-part series dedicated to human rights and the pursuit of justice through allyship and advocacy. I've been wrestling with a pretty big question for what seems a very long time. After centuries of racism, discrimination, oppression, and abuse, I keep asking myself how we can possibly end crimes against humanity and build a more equitable world. I don't have the answer. I do know that to create anything, you have to start with a vision. But at some point, we have to act. And if you're like me, you're wondering, what action do I take? Who am I in this moment and what is my role? It's different for everyone, but everyone can do something. Even if it seems small and insignificant, your single action might feel small, but if we all do our part, change is inevitable. The conversation is here to explore practical ways we can make an impact, inspire each other to act, and share those strategies with others. I hope you find inspiration in today's conversation and then take the next step and scan the QR code to find your one thing. Hi there. Today we are joined by Rory Gilbert, a highly accomplished consultant, facilitator, and trainer specializing in diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as communication and leadership. With a robust background that includes providing strategic direction for diversity initiatives at Maricopa Community Colleges and serving as executive director for the Arizona region of the National Conference for Community and Justice, Rory brings decades of experience in fostering equitable cultures and addressing social justice issues. Rory holds a master's degree in counseling and guidance and a deep expertise in navigating complex workplace dynamics and community challenges. We are here to speak with her today, not just about her professional career, but about her personal motivations, her views on current events, and the emotional journey that drives her advocacy. Rory, thank you for being here and for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank
I
you.
think, yeah, I think your perspective on a very complex and important issue is something many people are eager to hear. So to start, could you tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, I feel like we can start a long time ago before I was born. And I guess I want to start with the influence of my grandfather, who was a musician and in the First World War wound up leading a band of um, musicians who were black and couldn't be in other parts of the military, and took them touring throughout the country, including meeting people like George Washington Carver, who he became pen pals, I guess you would say, with, and they had a long correspondence. And so he was someone who read the New York Times every day, lived through the Holocaust era and World War II, and was somebody who wrote letters to the editor, who spoke up and really helped shape my view of what advocacy needed to look like and stepping up when other people step away. So I want to give him a lot of credit. And his name was Max Weinstein. So that's number one. I grew up in a kind of very, in a redlined area of New York, and then went to a college that forced me and required of me to really think about the world differently. And I realized I needed to do something like that, or else it was just going to be very easy to be complacent, and I didn't want to be. So that's kind of a kind of historical influence. I was born right soon after the Holocaust, and my godparents were people who were brought here from the camps. They were tattooed, They were refugees, and I believe, and this is, I can't tell you this in any written narrative form, that they probably were uh, described as relatives so that we could get them here, but I do not believe there was any blood relationship. So they were probably illegal immigrants, you know? And 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 I think about that those influences because in looking at the history of refugees and immigration and the fact that it's a flip of the coin, people make choices and make decisions. And I think about 500,000 Romanian Jews who were not allowed to come into the United States and were subsequently slaughtered because the Secretary of State decided not to give them visas. And so I think about the influence, which is just because something is legal doesn't make it right. And just because something is considered, quote, illegal doesn't make it wrong. And it's a balancing act in terms of morality and ethics and choices and humanity. And I will add one more thing in terms of those types of influences. It just happened to be an article in the New York Times this morning about a member of the Japanese consulate who was writing handwritten visas to people to get them out of Europe to save their lives, um, even though he was told to stop doing it. And he was then brought back to Japan and was stripped of his position, his authority, and lived a very, very meager life until some people started learning about what he had done. And he saved anywhere from, they say, I believe, 2 to 6,000 lives there that have grown to thousands and thousands of people who are alive because of that now. So I think what it tells us is we can't do everything, but we can all do something. And in the teachings of my faith and my value system, the notion is that we don't expect to be able to complete the work, nor do we have the right to ignore it. So that's kind of how I get to thinking about what do we do in the current time, in the current situations. So the other piece of the puzzle for me is that I did get my degree in counseling, and I did a lot of work with youth and families and really saw disparities in how people were treated and the circumstances they lived in. And it led me to doing work in the area of social justice, which I guess right now you can hardly say those words without getting in trouble. But trying to look at how do we create opportunities for folks to be and do as much as they can and contribute. And so I moved into, I always say I went from being a marriage and family therapist to being a community therapist, because I do believe the work of understanding this DEI notion is really an evolving learning experience. It has to go from the heart to the head. So that's
That's
historically what happened.
that is beautiful, and I knew this was going to be just an amazing conversation. I knew it would be. You said, like as you said, there is some. Each of us has something that we can do, and so to add to that, if we each do what we can, then that just needs to be enough. Um,
It it's hard though. I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm not doing enough. I mean, if I tell you, I um, I have the choice to not do, which other people don't have. You know, I guess again, another bad word in today's society. I have the privilege of being able to sit back if I want to. And so um, I would like to be able to do more. I would like to figure out how I can invest more energy, more time in addressing this, but at the very least saying, well, we each have to at least look at what can we do, how can we influence things, and try to sustain some level of hope or
Hmm.
optimism.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And that's what we're here for. We're here to kind of
Mhm.
talk through and think through these issues and what's really at stake, and to find in our hearts and in our heads what we feel like we can do. And I was just having a conversation with someone this morning who was really distraught over the fact that they're not in that position of privilege, and they know they're not doing anything, they're not doing enough. At the same time, they're fearful of the
Yeah.
consequences. And so, this is a common conversation that I'm having. And so that's, what we're here to kind of figure out.
And I think that's part of the reason I chose to have this conversation with you, is because there are so many people who really cannot. They have to make the choice to protect themselves and their families. And I honor that. When I've done the work I have done in DEI, it has been with the notion always that it is not my job to tell anyone else what they need to do. I go back to, I think about, do you remember Tiananmen Square? Were you
I
around
do.
for that? And I can't tell anybody their job is to lie down in front of the
In
tanks.
front of a tank.
You know, we each have to choose what we can do, but we also cannot just look away.
Mhm.
So
That's
that's
true.
where we get to, even just quite honestly, I'm not sure how much going to a protest makes a difference, but not going definitely makes a difference.
Definitely makes a difference. Exactly.
Because, and that's the thing. If nothing else, I can make my body part of the count, you know?
Be
I'm
physically
not
present.
I can be present, I can be counted. And to me, that in and of itself is an important piece of it. In what ways can we show up or speak up? And so, I know we had talked about, we met,
At the No
um,
Kings protest on the
right,
18th.
and that conversation about why are we here? And it's because I needed to be. Yeah. You think about, I mean, I grew up, um, I was still coming of age during the civil rights movement, and watching that and seeing people I know make choices to to go and stand with others and put themselves in harm's way. And I was there during the Vietnam era protests, and so it's the fact that we still have to do this, I guess it just doesn't, that there's always going to be that push.
So kind of now you've led us into this, where we're at right now, and knowing that you felt the need to be there physically present and do that.
Yes.
And so from that broader political landscape, Rory, I kind of already know, but do you want to say a little bit more about your views on the administration's current immigration policies, and what concerns you most about those policies?
Well, I think the f- there's so many things. Again, I think that the United States, for the, it's has wonderful pieces to it and it has faults in its history, but has always been a place that people have wanted to come to for safety and for opportunity. And I mean, at least that's the theme that I was indoctrinated into. And to, but I always know that there have been groups that have pushed back and have been isolationist. This particular movement, which seems both anti-immigrant, but also, and I'm going to just say it, it's white supremacist, that we're going to bring in white immigrants. I mean, seriously? Are we really in this space? And people are feeling
Yeah, we
comfortable
really are.
saying these things. I know. And then, and and to me, that's so many people feel so unsafe right now. We've I've been having recent conversations with someone that uh, is here as an exchange student, um, and they're saying, "Well, but I have my visa, on my phone. I have it with me all the time, which is required." And yet we're saying, "But that doesn't necessarily matter
Mhm.
because even U.S. citizens are being." Um, and even if trapped and corralled, we had a relative coming in from South America with his family for a family reunion, and he was pulled away from his family and interrogated for a length of time. And so the sense of the lack of safety and the fear and the lack of any real respect for due process um, is echoes really horrible situations in the past. And I think to me that's so there are many things that are unsettling, but the fact that we cannot trust that people who can just be safe is so distressing. And so that's critical. That's a place where I will say, I wish I could do more. Um, and and that if somebody could tell me what else can I do that is more than financially supporting and making connections, I've been able to help. And I don't know if I'm jumping ahead here, but if that's
Go
okay.
ahead. You just go, Rory. You just go.
Okay, I had the opportunity. Somebody I know has been doing some really wonderful work with refugee and immigrant populations, and wound up losing access to a lot of materials and support because of where they were subletting space. And I couldn't do anything directly, but I was able to connect them with an attorney who was willing to do that. And so that's little tiny thing, okay? But it's like listening enough to say, well, I might have a resource that could help. And then asking somebody who asked somebody who asked somebody that kind of piece. But sometimes it's just caring enough to not just go, oh well. So that made me feel kind of good. I really am selective now about um, what I am supporting financially and making a commitment to increase financial support um, to organizations that I believe have the capacity to really make a difference. It would be nice to be able to do more on the ground.
Hmm. So, what organizations do you in specific consider to be able to make a difference?
Well, everything from the Florence Project here to Democracy Forward, to ACLU, to the Bail Project. I always support. Um, so those are four that come to mind right off the bat. Also, making choices about particular um, elected officials who need direct support and making sure to support them is another piece of the puzzle. So those are some of the ways that I can do. The food bank right now is critical to do that, right?
It is critical, absolutely critical right now. I mean,
So,
this is almost like a matter of who's who is suffering the most physically right now. So
mhm,
at first it's been for me immigration and the way that this so-called enforcement has been happening and the brutality and just the cruelty of it
mhm,
all. And now, as of Saturday, it's literally starving people in the United States who don't have
mhm.
access to their few dollars of, SNAP benefits. And so it's like the fires are just poking their heads up everywhere.
Yeah. So it's making that choice, doing different things. Um, on the ground pieces, one of the things that I was able to do, so I mentioned how far to go. I mentioned that I had been involved with community colleges,
Mhm.
and one of the things we always did was um, support the celebration of graduation and success in culturally relevant ways. So that we had culturally relevant convocations for everybody from folks from different race and ethnicity groups to our LGBTQ community to our veterans to and as soon as all of the you better not do this stuff kicked in, they just dropped it. It was like, phew, I really think they were really, which is shocking because it used to be supported from the leadership on down. And I just thought, I can't, this is such a critically important, people don't get why it's important, but it's an opportunity for folks who have not been included in higher educational environments, as that's not the norm. First generation college going students who are celebrating success, and they bring family members with them. They bring their children, they bring their younger siblings and older siblings, and all of a sudden the notion that this is my world, I can do this, and I can succeed is there. It's probably one of the most powerful recruitment uh,
True.
strategies you can use. And to just say, well, we're just not going to do it and not going to celebrate people in the way they wish to be celebrated. I just couldn't live with that.
Yeah.
So, and I have been away from the system long enough that I didn't have the connections, but I had connections to people who had connections. So, made phone calls, who reached out to people who were trying to do something. And so being able to provide resources, financial resources, volunteering, just being there to support and motivate and work in community with other people who also recognized how important it was a way of really being able to give directly. And it wasn't necessarily the people who were starving, and I couldn't do anything about the people who were being rounded up by ICE, but I could do this something for people who were also important and being impacted by this. So that's that notion of figuring out where can I influence? What is the way I can do that becomes important to me.
Thank you so much for joining us for the conversation. By being part of this, you are supporting our mission to foster empathy, challenge ingrained stereotypes, and inspire individuals like you to become advocates for change. Together, we can build a more inclusive society where the human and legal rights of everyone, citizens and non-citizens alike, are upheld. Perhaps you feel that public protest isn't for you, but if you are a humanist, or if you care deeply about civil rights, equity, and justice, and you've ever felt helpless to make an impact, please know there is a powerful role for you to play. If we each commit to doing what we can, we will make a difference. To get started, please scan the QR code and find your one thing.